How's everything been coming along?
It's going pretty well. I had to take the last couple of days of the LSAT off, which is probably good because I was getting annoyed with it because of a wedding. So I'm back at it, and I just did a logical reasoning section, or excuse me, not logical reasoning, a logic game section. And it took me a little longer than it usually does. I took like 5 or 6 extra minutes after the timer went off to finish it, and I ultimately only got 4 wrong. But it's always funny how after taking only several days off, it takes me a little longer with that section. It's a weird way with the muscle of it. And something that I wanted to work on was when I do the logic games, I'm a visual person. And so I can't do it all in my head. Like I can't mentally map out the stuff. So I have to do a lot of like guess and check stuff. And I think that that's one of the things that might be holding me back a little bit or sucking up time. And so I want to know if there are any ways to sort of work around that, because obviously, if it weren't for the artificial time frame that the LSAT requires, this is kind of like it's a moot issue. But because we have to do it within an artificial time frame, what recommendations might you have?
Sure, absolutely. And so, of course, I agree that nobody should be trying to do logic games in their head. It's meant to push past the normal limits of short-term working memory, which is why they allow scratch paper. Now, the thing with scratch paper is that you don't want to draw all 5 answer choices on the paper. Yet means you might run out of space. And also, more importantly, as you said, you'd run out of time.
Yeah.
I call that brute forcing.
There's always at least 2 answers that you can almost always cross out because it's of an obvious rule break.
Yeah, that's right. That you don't want to draw out all 5 choices, in part because some choices you should be able to automatically dismiss based on the fact that they don't even seem likely, I hope. Mm-hmm. But if you're down to 2 choices, you have to draw out both. That's fine. What I want you to do is at least be strategic about it in terms of what you don't bother drawing at all because you know it doesn't work. And then secondly, which choices seem most likely based on how those particular variables, let's say, play a role in the game as a whole based on the rules and how they interact.
Yep. Okay.
The other thing I'll mention is that making inferences up front may help you avoid drawing out some choices, and also maximizing your use of previous work may help you eliminate some choices.
That's something that I find first of all, when I should say this before, one of the things I try to do, and especially on linear games, before I go to the first question, I almost always try to just create my own hypothetical scenario. So like, for example, yes, it's right here. So like on this game, after I went through all the rules, I just drew one out myself. And then I went to question 1 to figure out. So that way by question 1, I already had 2 scenarios that I could reference. The trick that I find is that when I get into the groove of the games, I often almost forget that I can reference previous stuff. And I just go, okay, if this is this, I start working it out. I often forget to look back and say, oh, I could check and see where this might apply. So that's something that I just need to be cognizant of, because in the momentum of the game, of the process, it just becomes a lot demanding, and I forget to do that.
Sure. I hear you. Yeah, keep your scratch paper clean and organized, and remember that, yes, you can always refer back to it, and in many cases, it will be useful.
Cool. But yeah, let me see. Got my notes here. Is there anything that you want to ask me? I know this is obviously like my tutoring session with you, but is there anything you want to particularly ask me while I try and get my thoughts in order? Oh, actually, I do have a question. I got it right this time. Last time I did one, I did it wrong. The one where you have to the question that usually comes at the end of a logic games where it suspends one of those rules. Are there any tips and tricks for that? Because sometimes it's blatantly obvious to me, and sometimes I'm like, I don't know, it could be that. It could be that one. Beats me. Are there any tricks for that? Is there like a set of questions that you can just drill that question type? Because I often get that one wrong more than not.
Absolutely. Yes. I'm glad you raised this. So rule substitution questions, I've got a whole workshop specifically on those in the course because people ask about them so much. So make sure you look up that one specifically, rule substitution questions workshop. And I give you a big list of every rule sub question that's ever appeared on the LSAT, and I recommend drilling them. Okay. And basically, and what I'll say for this is that you want something that's no more limiting than the original rule and no less limiting than the original rule. So identical consequences. And this is where previous work comes in handy, because if a given answer choice would render a previously valid scenario invalid, then it is more limiting in some way and could not possibly be correct. So it's helpful there. The other thing you want to make sure of is that your answer choice will lead to whatever inferences you initially had with the original rules.
Okay.
And these seem hard because they're rare, they're sporadic, even though they've actually appeared on nearly every exam since test 57. But it's not in every single game. If you're doing older games, you might not come across them that much. But I recommend doing a bunch in a row where you just do the initial setup for the game and then the rule sub question only. So you can see, hey, these aren't really so bad. Okay. If anything, I think they're more similar to orientation questions than to a general global question, which I find is often.
By orientation, do you mean the questions that have conditional logic in them in this?
No, by orientation, I just mean that first question of the game, which is asking you what's an acceptable scenario.
Okay. Well, that's very helpful to think about. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. My pleasure. Anything else for today?
Top of mind, no. So thank you, though.
Yeah, my pleasure. If anything else comes up, feel free to reach out. I'm happy to help.
Of course. Thank you very much.
Thanks for tuning into the show. Please subscribe if you haven't done so already to be notified of new episodes as I release them. And feel free to reach out if you need anything at all as you move forward with your prep. I'm happy to help however I can. In the meantime, I wish you all the best and take care.